company which is interested in participating in any of these projects can go and give their credentials and then, start getting into a dialogue, with the government of Malaysia. Touching upon, again, Kenya, which again, we're talking about East Africa here. And when we look at, Kenya, they have come out with what is called as the Vision 2030. And as a part of their vision, again, they have identified some of the broad areas. The kind of challenges which they've looked at is infrastructure is one of the key challenges. We're talking about 1.2 million people getting added. So, agriculture and food processing, they need to, produce a lot more. So with that as a base, they've identified, some of these sectors, and within each of the sectors, there are, specifically flagship projects which have been defined. You would see, for example, this is in the ICT sector. They are coming up with a new city called as the Konza Technology City, which is around 65 to 70 kilometers from Nairobi city. And so they plan to transform from what is barren land into one of the very futuristic cities. And so that's a mechanism they are using to attract investments into the country. I wanted to touch a little bit on India and also talk a little bit about industrial corridors. So if we essentially talk about from independence, how many new cities has India come up with? We'll actually be able to count it on our fingers, and that's where the industrial corridors are projects which India is currently taking on. Now, these are things which were initiated 4 or 5 years ago, and essentially there are 4 primary industrial corridors which India is coming up with. The Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor is something which I'm sure all of you have heard of. It's been fairly successful, and essentially what one is talking about here is from the 1500 kilometer stretch between Delhi and Mumbai, there's a dedicated freight corridor which is coming up, and 300 kilometers on either side. That's where you'll have newer industrial regions, and so it's essentially 24 new cities which are going to come up in the next decade in this corridor. And there are 7 cities out of which are called as the early bird cities, the initial cities which are going to come up, and it's essentially touches upon 6 states in India. The kind of opportunities, there are what are called as the early bird projects, and within each subsector, you talk about power, you talk about logistics. Each of these areas, there are where there are early bird projects which have been defined. These are some snapshots. The best companies, the best master planners in the world are being used to essentially design these cities. The master plans. There are various convention centers and other things which are going to come up. This is an example of one of the early bird projects, and this is an industrial area, the Nimrana Japanese Park, which has come up 2 hours from where we are sitting right now, and you will see almost 40 automotive companies which have come up in this 1200 acre zone. And the kind of investments each company has made is in the tune of $25 million to $100 million. So what used to be in the middle of a desert, till let's say 5 years ago, today you will feel that you're actually in the middle of Japan. They have Japanese restaurants, Japanese hotels, and this is a very good example. We do take a lot of, our investors and people from investment promotion agencies to the Nimrana zone, and they do feel that, So these are essentially, some of the things which I wanted to touch upon, how countries are looking at, their economic development plans and how the investment strategies are coming out of that. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to, take those on. Thank you.
My name is Ramaswamy. I represent the sponsor. Dushyant, first of all, I must congratulate. An excellent presentation. And really opens up the mind. In fact, I was wanting somebody to bring out such a kind of a presentation to showcase where all, how countries have gone about. So that's on the first part. My point is that there are a lot of lessons which we can, as an industrial country, learn. But what is it that is preventing us from learning many of these? Because we have the finest of the brains within our country.
Absolutely.
There is no lack of resource available. What is it that is preventing us? Because as you rightly said, I'll take the example of Malaysia itself here. The kind of propaganda which they made to showcase one simple line that by 2020 they will be the developed country. Each and every citizen of that country possibly knows that, and it is ingrained in him or her. I'm just wanting to know, and in fact, I'll be also happy if I can assist some way on an individual level, Vicky and maybe yourself. What is that we people can do to percolate that into our own country, send it down right up to the bottom level? We call ourselves that we'll be the next superpower or we'll be, overtaking China. Lots needs to be done. What according to you could be done on a very simplistic fashion, but at the same time, in a structured manner to take this forward?
Right. Let me just, probably just pick up the example of the last project, Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, and talk about, some of the real problems which they are facing. Absolutely, fantastic project. KPMG is rated as one of the largest infrastructure development and one of the most innovative, infrastructure projects which is going up. But Mr. Amitabh Kant, who's the CEO, he's also on the board of Invest India. And essentially, now this is what I'm going to say is all out of, what I've read up. So some of the problems, for example, which they have been facing, one is, for example, JBIC, the Japanese government has got commitments, Japanese banks have commitments in these projects. But essentially, once they have committed, for example, $4.5 billion is what they're going to put in. Which projects are they going to go in? Now, this is something which is really being debated for a long time, as an example. Number two, there are too many players and too many stakeholders. That's essentially coming in as, a big bottleneck. Third, land acquisition, it's going on. They've kept a low profile about it. They've been fairly successful, but then there are pockets where they've been very successful and pockets, where they're very slow. So for example, Ujjain is in Madhya Pradesh, where they're coming up with the knowledge city. They've been able to easily acquire 1,200 acres of land. So these are, some of the problems. But see, the whole thing is that the environment right now is been really gloomy. And what I would say is that, we've had such a high 3 or 4 years ago that India was the world, it was the most beautiful place. Every person has to just invest here. There's nothing as good as this. So, the high has taken us to an equivalent low. The fact is that, we I would say, are somewhere in the middle and maybe going up, and, obviously things are gloomy. It's known. But if we really look at the medium to the long term, there are some certain fundamentals which will remain pretty good and positive about India. The size of the market. You have consumers here, you have people who have to buy. Now, that's a fact nobody will be able to ignore. We are not rated, 130x on the World Bank's doing business, whatever. That's all fine. But at the end of the day, you still have people here who are going to buy. And essentially, once people are here, once they've set up their operations, they do make money. So that's a fact. So I would say is that, similar to the way the whole gloom had been, is what, our own view had also been similar. But, projects of this sort are what, so instead of, let's say, 7 years, they might take, let's say, 11 years or 10 years. But then if one can consistently, work in a planned manner towards it, there are bottlenecks which are coming in. The downside right now, the bottlenecks which I see, for example, in DMIC, is it'll take more time. But then success will come, is what I would say. So, if the right agencies can come together, I think that's one good step. The second thing which I see is that there's a lot of competition among state governments in India in terms of getting investments, which is good for us. More the investment, and a lot of these states are using consulting companies sitting behind them. Now, if I pick up the phone, if I talk to, MIDC in Maharashtra, it might be a, KPMG or an ENY guy picking up the phone, and I do get, that level of professionalism, or, at least some sense of a better response. Now, these bigger events which they're planning, Gujarat does the Vibrant, and Karnataka will do the Global Investors Meet and all that stuff. Now, the fact is that post these events and post all of those MOUs which get signed, they do put in large teams of people sitting behind it. So, while this, single window concept and all those things, one will have a lot of mixed feedbacks about it, may not work. But fact is that in certain cases, once you've signed an MOU, in one of these bigger meets, some of the states have really been giving and resolving issues. And I do, on a daily basis, we get a lot of problems. I can give you examples of problems people face and, how we have been resolving them. And these are all live cases, because we are actually on the ground, going down, trying to, get these cases resolved. They start from aspects like labor. Now, legal issues are something which, we don't have that much expertise, so we, fall back on, lawyers to help us out with. But day-to-day problems, SMEs essentially, we try and help them out. And I'm sure it is going to take a little bit more time. The scenario may remain gloomy for next 1 or 2 years, but the medium term is something which I feel India has got certain strengths which would remain. So if we can maybe, in the way services may dip down a little bit, or, the growth may remain constant, but if manufacturing can go up a little bit, just a little bit, if food processing sector can do a little bit better, some of these sectors, if we can do a little bit. So it, again, boils down to, I would say, development plans of these stages, and then, maybe us not meeting them, let's say 70%, but even us creating ambitious plans, meeting them 30, 40%. If we can do that, I would say that itself can be a thing. And yes, everybody, everybody has to contribute. So as lawyers, a lot of them who are in this room, every time when you get a client, if you can hold his hand and make him feel comfortable about it, I think that itself would be anything, sir, you'd like to?
I just want to ask just a follow-up question for you. You mentioned four corridors. I saw the DMIC. I didn't see the slides, unfortunately, from here. What are the other 3 corridors?
So we have the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor. We have the Chennai-Bangalore Industrial Corridor. We have the BMEC, Mumbai-Bangalore Economic Corridor. That's where the government of UK is, coming in a big way. And we have, the Kolkata-Delhi-Amritsar Corridor. Now, DMIC out of that has been at slightly advanced stages where, there's been good amount of work on the ground, real projects which are there for people to go in and see. But the other 3 corridors are where, they are in the study phases. So each of those, so 25 new cities in DMIC, and similarly in the other 3 corridors also we expect, new cities to come in. If we talk about, let's say, the Chennai-Bangalore Economic Corridor, again, a substantial amount of Japanese investments are today in southern part of India, so that's the Chennai, Tamil Nadu kind of belt is where, there's the auto hub and all of that stuff. So when we have partners like, Japan, Korea, UK, and all of these countries coming in, I would say there would be certainly, some good progress, which we have to, for companies across segments, subsectors. We talk about infrastructure, you talk about, power, water, waste management, it's, transport infrastructure, logistics, a lot of opportunities. It'll take a lot of time. It's not going to come up, as on tomorrow. But certainly, smaller companies, medium-sized companies from UK, from other, it will mean opportunities for them. So, thank you.
Hi, may I ask a question?
Sure.
My question is, my question is addressed to Mr. Thakor, and it is in context of what Mr. Ramesh Vaidyanathan asked. We have somebody who's representing means you are partners with the government, and he raised certain questions regarding single window mechanisms and all that kind of stuff, getting wine from the states and all that. So my question to you is, how do you propose to address the questions which he raised, like multitude of regulatory authorities? He may tell you that. Then inconsistency of the investment regime, time-bound disposal of applications, concept of deemed approval, effective single window. That's it. So that is one. And my other question is addressed to Mr. Vaidyanathan himself. As you said that in India, when it comes to enforcing the contracts, damages as a rule and specific performance as an exception. So I want your suggestions on that.
Okay. Let me talk about the limited role that we play. See, it's a very small agency in West India, and like I said, set up only in 2010. Most of the investment agencies in other countries have existed since, the 90s or, since 2001, 2002. So we are babies in the field. and fairly small in size. Most of the IPAs in other countries, you talk about Invest Sweden, you talk about Invest in France agency, fairly large in scale. They'll have teams of 50 people, 100 people, sufficiently funded by the government. We are fairly small. It's a team of only 5 people right now. Now, what is it that we do not do? We are not getting into any sort of policy issues in the sense of, opening up of sectors or getting, so if I get a, request from somebody saying that, can you help us open retail sector further in India or whatever? Now, that's not an issue because, you do have all the chambers in India. You'll have FICCI, CIIs, you have sectoral chambers, you have whatever. So everybody is, talking about it. We don't do that. We are more of the hands-on guys. We don't work at, a industry or a sector level. We work on an individual company level. So if a company comes up to me and says that, I was supposed to get this 5 acres of land in Karnataka at this place, my engineering drawings and everything has been made as per this particular plan. I need specifically this piece of land. Government of Karnataka is giving me another land which is 2 kilometers away. Now, I'll pick up his issue, I'll talk to Government of Karnataka, I'll make all the representations and do whatever is required. Let's talk about another few cases. For example, a company comes up to me and says that I have had a labor issue. I'm based in Maharashtra and we are having a lot of external pressure on us, on our workers not to perform at 100% efficiency, and they might say we are not getting our clearances and bottlenecks. So each of those companies are where we are very happy to, let me just explain how we work. It's a very small team, but we have very good close working with the state governments. So essentially the industries department in the state and right up to the chief minister's offices where we can, knock their door, we can go in and, get things done or whatever. But we essentially start by writing letters to them. And this is all the work that we do is pro bono because we are not ourselves bearing a cost. And it's simply, about writing letters and, following up on it. So essentially what we are being, and I'm handling a lot of mining cases right now. And you can imagine mining cases are what involve a lot of,